Barbara Dunn is an aviation safety consultant and former flight attendant.
We take our job very seriously. We take our safety role very seriously. I think if you asked any member of a cabin crew what their primary function on board the aircraft was, they would tell you that it was a safety role.
But how do flight attendants master that role? How do they become survival experts? The answer is behind the doors of a facility passengers rarely get to see.
According to my practice, the best training is a practical training. That's why there is a cabin emergency evacuation trainer of Airbus 320.
Richard Kubelka is the chief cabin crew instructor at the Czech Airlines Training Center in Prague. It's one of only a few facilities in the industry that offers realistic cabin emergency training.
The cabin emergency evacuation trainer is not a real aircraft. It's a mock-up. It's a model.
The 28-ton simulator has two emergency slides, one at the forward door, the other at the overwing exit. Inside there are 40 seats with overhead bins and realistic lighting.
We can simulate all kinds of flights, a normal flight or some non-standard situation.
Leading today's session is cabin instructor Tomáš Chlupak.
Okay, the seats please.
Chlupak is preparing 11 young flight attendants for the worst.
All the training and all the practical drills have to be performed quickly and safely.
They'll take turns being passengers and crew members on a series of simulated disasters.
So we are ready for the flight. I'm pressing start button. That means the engines are starting now.
From the control room at the back of the simulator, Richard Kubelka initiates a scenario.
We are now taking off.
The simulator's powerful hydraulic lift system comes to life.
The hydraulic system simulates the movement of the aircraft, so we can shake the cabin during the training to simulate the real situation during the flight.
Please fasten your seatbelts. We are flying through a turbulent area just now.
In the cabin, it looks, feels, and sounds exactly like a real flight.
The training has to be as realistic as possible in order to prepare you for anything that might happen on the aircraft.
I press landing button. That means we are landing now. Nobody knows that something will happen in a few minutes. It is also called an unprepared emergency situation.
Most of our accidents take place during takeoff or landing, and they are unprepared. You don't know it's going to happen. Often passengers bury themselves in a newspaper or a book. Some of them go to sleep, and that's when you need to have your wits about you.
Any moment now, the Czech Airlines trainees will be up against that clock.
So the cabin must be clear in 1 minute and 30 seconds.
The hydraulic lift rocks the cabin, simulating a hard emergency landing.
Evacuate, evacuate.
Seatbelts off! Seatbelts off! Leave everything!
Our evacuation commands are designed to get people up and moving and towards the exit and out of the airplane.
The slide on this simulator is already extended, so to keep the timing realistic, flight attendants must wait until they hear the sound of the slide being inflated.
Leave everything! Come this way! Jump and slide! Jump and slide!
It is recommended to cross your hands when you are sliding to protect yourself.
Jump and slide!
We do what's called looping. We repeat over and over and over and over again until we are sure that everybody who can get out is out.
The looping helps combat a psychological phenomenon known in the industry as negative panic.
That's when people freeze in their seats and they don't want to move. Instead of getting up and rushing towards an exit, they just sit there and wait for somebody to tell them what to do.
Research video has shown that while some passengers freeze,
Undo your seatbelt.
others will do almost anything to get off a plane as quickly as possible. A famous study by the UK Civil Aviation Authority revealed that desperation and outright panic can take hold in seconds, even in a simulated emergency. Evacuation training teaches flight attendants how to quell that kind of panic. By playing the role of the passenger, they get at least some idea of how frightening a real emergency would be.
This simulator is the state-of-art of technology to train the future cabin crews. I feel that if in real life something happens, I will really know what to do.
Today, the A320 simulator will show what happens when that protection fails.
Now, next topic is rapid decompression. When the masks are dropping down, you have to use them immediately.
The passenger's cabin is pressurized. So that means at cruising altitude, there is a higher pressure inside the cabin than outside. We are climbing to the cruising altitude.
Any breach in the fuselage at cruising altitude causes an instant depressurization, leading to a scene that would look and sound something like this.
Ah, something happened. Taking the masks, take the masks and use them.
It could be caused by a window blowing out, an aircraft door opening. It could be caused by a propeller coming through the fuselage. There's any number of reasons that could cause it, but it's a rapid loss of cabin pressure.
Oxygen masks are critical, as most of the air in the cabin gets sucked out by the difference in pressure.
Above the heads of the passengers, there is a chemical generator. If we pull down any mask which is connected to the chemical generator, the generator will come on and produce 100% of oxygen for approximately 12 or 15 minutes.
If all goes well, 15 minutes of oxygen buys the pilots enough time to descend to an altitude where the masks are no longer needed.
For us it's important to know this shock, when the masks are falling down, and to react, to take it on, and to try to give the information to the passengers to pull the mask down and use them.
Rapid decompression emergencies are extremely rare, affecting less than 1 in a million commercial flights each year. At the Czech Airlines Training Center,
Just now we'll practice the most complicated case, firefighting during the in-flight service.
the team of young flight attendants is ready to test what may be the most crucial safety skill of all, fighting fire.
Fire is very, very frightening on an airplane because there's nowhere to go. In a house, if you have a house fire, you can go outside and you get away from the fire. You can't do that on an airplane.
And you can't call the fire department. The cabin crew must respond in seconds or face an unstoppable inferno. A320 simulator.
So service is in progress. We have a wonderful meal today.
Meal service training is about to get a lot more exciting, thanks to an automated smoke generator.
Maybe
We can simulate the in-flight fire using smoke in the cabin. We can choose the place, for example, inside the lavatory, inside the galley, under the seat, or in the overhead compartment.
As wisps of smoke start to appear in the cabin, the crew springs into action, clearing the aisle and grabbing the protective smoke hood and fire extinguisher that are stored on all A320s.
perfect.
It's very important to start a cooperation between cabin attendants and flight crew members. So let's say that the first cabin attendant will start firefighting procedures. The second cabin attendant will call the flight crew members.
Captain, there's a fire in the cabin. We started the firefighting.
And the other cabin attendants will take care about passengers.
Improvised filters.
You can get them to breathe through something so that you're filtering some of the smoke and the toxic particles out.
Was it extinguished? Okay, right.
The experience inside is very, very realistic.
It's quite heavy and it's very difficult to orient in the smoke in the cabin and see the people around and try to extinguish the fire.
If putting out a simulated fire in a simulated plane is difficult, better fire training means that today's flight attendants get to actually feel the heat.
We need to train cabin attendants how to fight a real fire. That's why the firefighting simulator is important for the training.
The firefighting trainer doesn't move. It's made of solid steel and is completely fireproof.
Welcome. Well, come in. Thank you.
It can simulate 3 types of onboard fire: a galley fire, overhead compartment fire, and fire from below the floor, one that might originate in the cargo hold.
Okay. So put your smoke hood on, please.
For some trainees, it's the first time they've had to fight a cabin fire while wearing restrictive gear.
For new employees, it's very important to realize that the in-flight fire is a very difficult situation.
You have the extinguisher.
The drill is carried out with a water-filled extinguisher.
Okay, short burst and close it.
On an actual flight, they'd be using even more effective halon gas extinguishers.
Close it. Check once more, please. Directly, don't be afraid. You can be closer. Right. Good. Good experience. Well, you can remove it along.
It's the kind of training Barbara Dunn wishes she'd had
Next one, please.
when she began her career as a flight attendant.
When I was hired in 1971, we had no simulators at all. Our firefighting training consisted of firing off a water extinguisher into a garbage can, and that was it.
Don't be afraid. Come closer.
So it's changed dramatically. The training process is comprehensive now.
Okay, that's all. Good. Next one, please.
Each flight attendant will face the flames before moving on to the most physically demanding drill of all: water survival training.
We need to train all cabin attendants as well as flight crew members what to do in case of ditching. Ditching means landing on the water.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome on water survival training.
The training begins with a quick lesson on how to safely jump into the water from a ditched plane.
Position is like this.
That's important. An injured flight attendant can't be much help to passengers.
And the purpose of this position is protecting your important parts of the body and my head against the sharp objects into any water. Is it clear? Yeah. Let's go.
Yes.
Now we have to keep the energy saving position. Cross your arms and legs and bend.
Ocean water temperatures can be frigid, as low as 10 degrees Celsius across much of the Atlantic. Flight attendants learn to preserve body heat to ward off hypothermia.
And stay in such position as long as necessary.
All long-haul flights over water are equipped with life rafts. Some, like this one, are slide rafts, evacuation slides that convert to a raft.
Please, just now we will board the slide raft.
They carry up to 70 people, but they are next to useless if you don't know how to get in quickly and safely.
Use all of the red loops.
In order to be seaworthy, the raft needs sturdy side walls that rise a meter above the surface. Anyone trying to board from the water must negotiate a flimsy fabric ladder.
You'd have to be in good shape to get into a slide raft, or very motivated.
Even with help from those already on board, it's a physically demanding challenge. All the more reason to put flight attendants through it on a regular basis.
New employees, they usually say to me that the practical training is much more difficult for them than they expected.
Though water ditchings are rare, perhaps the most famous aviation emergency of all time ended with passengers fearing for their lives on the open water. For flight crews and passengers alike, there's one more important statistic. The odds of dying in a plane crash are incredibly small, less than 1 in 10 million. That means that this Czech Airlines flight crew, and every other crew around the world, will almost certainly never need to draw on their well-honed safety skills. But if disaster does strike, passengers can rest easy knowing their cabin crew has the skill to get them out alive.